Hi, True Avatars, and welcome to your weekly queer video game podcast. This is episode 48, and I am your host, Zoe Wild. I am a transgender and bisexual woman, and my pronouns are she, her. So, this week, it's just me for the first half with the news, and there was kind of a lot, actually, so it's probably good that it's just me, because otherwise I think if I had a guest on, we'd be here for a couple hours, so... Like, just Gamescom alone was pretty big, and that's actually one of the headlines. So, Gamescom, which is like a major gaming event in Germany once a year, it happened this week, and there were a ton of announcements, some at Opening Night Live, some at the other events. There was news on Fallout Season 2, Unbeatable, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 DLC, and Ghost of Yotei. In other news, The Last of Us Online has been revived spiritually, kind of, by some of the devs at their own studio. Games Done Quick has a queer announcement. 2 queer games are getting a collaboration. There were more layoffs. There was actually Silksong news, and no, I am not joking. And that message is actually specifically for Cleo, who still doesn't believe it. Kirby Air Riders finally has a release date, and so much more. The upside to the onslaught of news this week is that I didn't find any updates on the payment processor situation, so we can take a little bit of a rest from that, thankfully, at least for this week. I'm sure next week it'll be back with, a vengeance, but for now, let's just enjoy the lack of devolution on that front. But in the second half of the episode, I have an interview with Ghostmoth's lead artist, Kelly Gilkes. Ghostmoth is the indie development team behind Matchmaker Dungeon Heart, which I reviewed last week in episode 47.5. Please go back and check out that episode if you haven't, and stay tuned for this exciting interview later in this week's show. What we've been playing and Queer Game of the Week will be back next week. Before I jump into the news, I have a few quick favors to ask of you, True Avatars. If you like this podcast, please leave a comment, rating, or review on your preferred podcast platform. Spotify has ratings and comments, while Apple has reviews. Engagement like comments, ratings, and reviews helps to grow the podcast, and a growing podcast means a happy podcast host who is forever happy and fulfilled that you enjoy listening to her show, which creates an infinite feedback loop of more podcast episodes and more growth and more happiness. So please go leave a comment, rating, and or review. Also, please follow True Avatars, a queer video game podcast, on social media. There are accounts on Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Facebook, and YouTube at True Avatars, and you can also find the podcast on the official website, trueavatarspodcast.com, no spaces. And remember, this is a weekly queer video game podcast, so check in every week. I aim to bring you news, interviews, and updated discussions that are relevant to queer gamers, so you have a safe space to check in on the world of gaming from a 2S LGBTQIA+ lens. It's time for the news. Okay, so, we're gonna start with, I'm gonna start with Gamescom. There's no one else here. I always say we as if there's, it's just me today. So I'll start with Gamescom though, because, there was quite a bit here, and it's actually pretty exciting. I think there was a lot of interesting news. I'm not gonna be able to cover nearly all of it. I'm gonna cover the things that I think are relevant to queer gamers, and just bigger announcements in general, but anyway, one that kind of excited me, but also is kind of relevant, is there was some Sonic news, but it was also Pac-Man news, and all in one fell swoop. So, Pac-Man World 2 was originally announced to be getting some, DLC stages, that were going to be collaborations, and so those stages are actually with Sonic. So Pac-Man is going to show up in Sonic Racing Cross Worlds in early 2026, and then in late 2025, I believe, Pac-Man World 2 is going to be getting, 3 Sonic-themed stages, and we only saw one of them so far, and it's Green Hill Zone. And it's kind of like a little bit of Pac-Man World 2 gameplay, but it also looks like this, Pac-Man is doing some Sonic, rolling, through levels, which is kind of cool, because, there's a whole game where Pac-Man does rolling. It's called Pac and Roll, and it's actually quite cute. Plays a lot different than Sonic, but we know Pac-Man has rolled as a ball before, so it makes some sense. Speaking of Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, Sonic is also, that game is also getting another network test on all platforms except Switch 2. It will be on Switch 2, but only through Switch 1 backwards compatibility. The Switch 2 native port, is not getting a network test. And this takes place from August 29th to September 1st, so this coming week. And you should be able to just download the beta test version of the game from whichever platform store that you want. And I think that starts August 26th. The website wasn't 100% clear, and neither were the news sources, so I think that's how it goes. I don't think you actually have to sign up for this one, and I hope you get lucky. I think you can just download it and play. But if anyone wants to tell me that I'm wrong, please feel free in the comments. Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is getting an anime. It's called Sekiro No Defeat. It is an adaptation. I have not played the game, so I don't know if it's like a one-to-one adaptation, if it's there's some looseness with it. I'm not sure, but it was a really cool looking trailer with all this sword fighting and stuff. It looked beautiful. It looks really gorgeous. If you like anime, or you like Sekiro, or you like Souls-likes, you should probably go check out this anime trailer, because it's super cool. And yeah, so it's Crunchyroll exclusive, which makes some sense. I mean, the only 2 platforms that really have a lot of anime exclusives anyway are either Crunchyroll or Netflix, and sometimes they share anime too. So, and there's no release date. For some reason, I thought it said 2026 in the trailer, but I think I'm just remembering a different trailer. So it has no release date. It's not 2026, but, maybe someone else had the Manila effect that I had, where I thought it was next year. In other news, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is getting a Switch 2 port. It's coming next year. Zaum, the developers behind Disco Elysium, or at least the team that's there now is what's left of that team. I think there's been a big overhaul there since. I'm not sure of all the details, but they're making a game that's kind of a spiritual successor. It's called Zero Parades. It is a CRPG, and the description from Steam reads as follows. You're a brilliant but tormented operant on a desperate assignment. Pick up the pieces of your broken network, untangle a bloody web of intrigue at the end of history, and prove yourself on the big stage or blow it all up again. I'm not sure if there's going to be queerness to this. I'm not really sure if it's going to hit the same as Disco Elysium. But I know Disco Elysium is a very queer game. It's very popular with queer people, especially trans women in particular. So anyway, yeah, if Disco Elysium interests you, maybe go check out this trailer. Again, I know that a lot of the team is not there anymore, so this is probably going to feel a lot different, but I thought I would mention it. Another game that was discussed on stage, it's already out actually, but the developer behind The Darkest Files got up on stage and gave an amazing speech about how democracy is under attack and how video games as an art form and medium can inspire positive change to fight this attack on democracy. And the game The Darkest Files is actually based on a true story about dealing with former Nazis back in the 1950s. So, right now we're dealing with future Nazis and this game deals with former Nazis. So you can kind of see the comparison there, right? So, Unbeatable, the Scott Pilgrim Kill la Kill rhythm game, which is super queer. One of the musicians that's doing the music is one of the composers, I should say, is a trans woman. And anyway, so this game has a release date now, November 6th. It is coming to, I think, all platforms. I can't remember if it's coming to Switch or not, but I think it's coming to everything else. Honor of King's World is another game that got revealed. It's an RPG that kind of looks like it has similar combat to Final Fantasy VII Remake, so I'm kind of down for this. I don't know if it's going to be queer at all, but I think Final Fantasy VII Remake is pretty queer, and this game has similar combat to that. So if you like me, you're not getting the itch scratched out of other Final Fantasy games, because that combat system from 7 Remake is literally only in that game. If you want something similar like that, which I do, you can go play Honor of King's World. Chronos: The New Dawn had an interesting little development that I did some research into, because I was a little confused, because I thought the protagonist was a man. I feel like I saw a trailer where they described the protagonist as male, or anyway, I could be misremembering that. But anyway, what sparked this, excuse me, what sparked this was that Jeff Keighley got up on stage and said that the protagonist had they, them pronouns. He referred to them as they. So even though so I looked it up, and the protagonist, known as the Traveler, actually has been confirmed to be a woman with she, her pronouns. I've seen arguments online when I was looking this up, actually, specifically. It's not like I've been following this, but I was trying to figure out, the gender of the protagonist. And there's a bunch of arguments online, of course there are, that many men are mad that the protagonist may have initially been a man. So I'm wondering if his use of they, them is an oversight, or if it's a misdirect that was given to him specifically to say, to prevent outrage during the presentation. Cause, he could have said she, and then suddenly, people are kind of mad at the game. Gamer bros that are perpetually mad about this kind of stuff always kind of it baffles me. I'm not sure why it matters if you play as a man or a woman. Sure, sometimes it's nice to be able to play as your prefer, your gender, but other times, it's nice to step into someone else's shoes and experience different things. That's why we experience art. I don't always want to see art reflected back at me. I don't want to see myself reflected back at me through the art and media that I consume. So, anyway, Outer Worlds 2 had a companions trailer. I'm still not seeing any info if there's queer characters in this one, but the previous game did have some queer characters, I think, in as the NPCs. So hopefully Outer Worlds 2 has some nice, fruity elements to it as well. Moonlighter 2 is coming October 23rd. I know Zoe Straw was playing the first one when she was on last week, so I thought I would mention this. I don't think that game is inherently queer, but it's cool that there's a second one coming. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. The title's a mouthful for me in IMO, but anyway, it had a new trailer. It's coming October 21st. I know the original game has some queer vibes. Hopefully this one does too. I couldn't find any confirmation on whether or not there were queer characters in this one. Presumably because it's not out yet, but, sometimes they advertise that. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, had a DLC trailer for Legacy of the Forge. I don't think this is the entire DLC package. This is just one part of it. But it's coming September 9th. The description is as follows. Returning to Kuttenberg, Henry puts his blacksmithing skills to the test to acquire and repair a legendary burnt-down forge where his father, Martin, spent his youth as an apprentice. Okay, we're coming up with the last two things from Gamescom here that were specifically on Opening Night Live. World of Warcraft the Midnight expansion, I should say, has a vague 2026 release date now. And finally, Ghost of Yotei is getting free DLC, and I'm sure anyone who played Ghost of Tsushima knows that this DLC is the Legends multiplayer, and it is coming back for Ghost of Yotei. It is free DLC. I've never played the Legends DLC, but everything I've heard about it is that it's awesome, so it's really cool that this is coming back, and of course, it is free, which is also awesome. All right, that's Opening Night Live. There's a couple more Gamescom adjacent news. Some of it happened around Gamescom, some of it happened like at Gamescom, but it wasn't like an announcement. The first thing is the thing that Cleo will never believe, is that Silksong has a release date. Yes, listeners, if you have not been caught up on this, if you somehow haven't heard the news being shouted from the top of every building on the planet, Silksong has a release date. It got a brand new official trailer from Team Cherry. The game is confirmed to be releasing for basically all platforms on Thursday, September 4th, which is next week. If you're listening to the podcast on the Monday it comes out, I think that's about 10 days away, so it's like really close. They announced it on the Thursday, so it's literally like 2 weeks before it was supposed to be out. They were like, here's, Silksong. It's coming. So, and the full title is Hollow Knight Silksong, I should say. I haven't been shortening it to Silksong like the rest of the internet, but it is the Hollow Knight sequel that was originally going to be a DLC. And if you're a backer for Hollow Knight, I'm pretty sure check your Kickstarter, because a code should be coming your way, because this was originally planned to be Kickstarter DLC. So, and then in a Bloomberg article, get this, this is wild to me. I can't believe they announced this. Like, I get that they're doing it and I'm happy for it, but like, I can't believe they announced this. But in a Bloomberg article, the developers, Team Cherry, they confirmed that they're working on DLC for an undetermined future date. Make of that what you will. Okay, and then other Gamescom adjacent news. This is the last bit, actually. Final Fantasy 14 and 16 could be coming to Nintendo Switch 2. At Gamescom, Yoshi P, the director of 14, said, speaking to VGC at Gamescom, and this comes straight from, I'm just quoting the VGC article at this point. Speaking to VGC at Gamescom, Yoshida discussed the potential benefits of bringing Switch 2 into FF14's lineup of platforms, and said he hoped there would be, quote, good news, unquote, for expectant future fans in the future. He said, for me, it's just my aim to provide Final Fantasy 14 and 16 to as many players as possible, and I hope that as many players as possible will be able to enjoy these two games. We are putting in our best efforts to ensure that this happens, so it's fine to convey to your readership that I consider the possibilities very positively, and we are putting in our best efforts, so I hope players will look forward to possibilities in the future. But I just ask for a little bit more time, and that's the whole VGC thing that I'm quoting there. So that's pretty cool that these games can be coming to Switch 2. I think they're long overdue, particularly Final Fantasy 14, which has a lot of queer fans, and I know a lot of queer fans are on the Nintendo, love their Nintendo Switch, so it makes sense that these two things should be married together, so to speak. So, and Final Fantasy 14 is just huge in general. Like, it would make sense to get it on every platform. It's like that other game. I can never remember its name. It's like that Breath of the Wild online multiplayer ripoff. Genshin Impact. I know it's not entirely a Breath of the Wild ripoff, but I know it has some elements of that, and it looks a little similar. That was supposed to be coming to Switch years ago, and it's just it's like vaporware at this point. That version of it anyway. And that's just another game with a huge following that makes sense to be on Nintendo Switch. So, any big multiplayer game, and it'll just keep these platforms alive. If there's multiplayer games that people just want to obsess over on a console, keeps the console going. And then those players who are on that console buy other games, and then suddenly, cause what I like about when the Nintendo Switch 2 does well, I don't really care about the sales figures that much, but I'm not a fangirl rooting for Nintendo to have the best sales possible, but when the system does well, it gets more third-party games, and then we get nice, little hopefully complete on cartridge games to collect, which is kind of fun to get nice, lots of third-party games on cartridges. It feels so old school to me. I just love it. I just love the tactile feeling of putting in a cartridge. So anyway, that's my soapbox for that. That's the Gamescom news. Some ex-devs who worked on the canceled Last of Us multiplayer game made their own studio. So, they are working on a similar game to The Last of Us Online. Obviously, it won't be at all related to The Last of Us, but the gameplay loop will likely be similar to the original Factions mode on PS3, with extra story elements included. I would have to imagine, how the canceled The Last of Us multiplayer game was also going to tell a bit of a story among the multiplayer elements. And I guess that's kind of similar to Concord as well, as weird as that might sound. There's no release date for this. Development only just started. We have now reached the layoffs portion of this podcast, unfortunately. So Cloud Chamber, the dev team under Take-Two that is developing BioShock 4, which has been in development for a long time, I'm sure you might have noticed, has laid off 80 people, which is a third of the studio, which is super unfortunate. But I guess if you're a fan of BioShock, this is good news because apparently they're kind of trimming the fat, I guess, a little bit. And, trying to just get the game out the door because they've hired a new lead dev known as a closer, which is someone who basically comes in and writes the ship in whatever ways are necessary to get the game out the door. And I think I'm stealing the out the door thing from the article a little bit. But I just like that phrase. And so this guy's name is Rod Ferguson. And he did the same closer role on BioShock Infinite and got that game out, released. So, this could be good news for the game itself, but obviously I consider this pretty much bad news because they just laid off 80 people. So that's really unfortunate, but they also said in the article that the game was originally planned for 2026 or 2027, but will now be released later than that with no specified release date. So BioShock 4 is still a long time away. Hopefully no more layoffs in the meantime before that game, gets out the door. But anyway, let's lighten it up with some good news here. So Games Done Quick, the speedrunning charity, is introducing Games Done Queer. On Instagram, they wrote, "We're beyond excited to announce our newest charity speedrunning event, GD Queer. GD Queer will take place October 31st and November 2nd and will run submissions. And run submissions will be open from August 28th to September 14th. Stay tuned for our charity reveal coming soon." This is the joke I made on our little, Discord chat that we coordinate the podcast on, and I just said, GD Queer was my nickname in college, which is a terrible joke. But anyway, aside from the acronym GD Queer, which is, admittedly, I don't love it, but this is a really cool initiative. I think this is great. I think this is, sorely needed. More visibility in games. More visibility for queer people in general that's positive is just really important right now because the people who aren't hating on us are also actively not talking about us as well because they're just trying to they're just trying to get through the day too as well. They don't want to have the internet rain down upon them. So I'm really happy that Games Done Quick is doing this, acronym aside. So Dragon Age: The Veilguard is coming to Game Pass on August 28th, and that's basically the headline there. That's 3 days after this podcast comes out. So you're listening on the Monday, it's 3 days. So I think that's Thursday. I want to say it's Thursday. Yeah, that's Thursday. So anyway, Dragon Age Veilguard. So if you haven't played it yet and you have Game Pass, this is your chance now. If you want to, it's not free, but obviously if you're already paying for Game Pass, it's included. So Helldivers 2 is getting Halo content, which I think is super cool. I don't play Helldivers 2, and I haven't played Halo in 20 years, mainly because I haven't had an Xbox until very recently, and I just haven't had a chance to get back into to Halo. But not only is this popular, it's not the most popular, but this popular multiplayer game Helldivers 2 getting Halo content, this is also the first time that Halo content will be available on PlayStation. And the description is as follows. Enter the Obedient Democracy Support Troops, ODST, aka the Helljumpers. This new equipment set from the Ministry of Defense will give your Helldivers the look of the fabled unit every Super Earth citizen had on their school lunchbox as kids. End quote. And there's also going to be weapons from Halo as well. So, yeah, first Halo content on PlayStation. It's available August 26th, which is the day after this podcast releases. So my math on Dragon Age was also correct. All right, we're down to the last two headlines here. I know I've kind of been breezing through these, but I guess maybe I could have had a guest on at this point, but everyone is kind of busy. It's been a busy week. It's the end of the summer, I wanted to give everyone a break. So anyway, Sega Atlas and Overwatch are teasing Persona content in Overwatch 2. So at the end of the latest Overwatch 2 trailer, which was advertising Season 18, how did they get to 18 seasons of this game? It hasn't only been out a few years. Anyway, regardless, Season 18 got a trailer, and at the very end, Joker was teased. They play some Persona music and graphics, and then Joker kind of jumps in, or his silhouette does, and then, I think there's some gunshots too. Atlas also quote tweeted the trailer and wrote that it's almost time. So it seems like Joker will be playable as a skin in Overwatch 2. If you play Overwatch or you're a fan of Persona, this sounds like great news. I'm a fan of Persona, but I don't play Overwatch, so this is not for me. But Overwatch 2 is a very queer game, and as we know, Persona is also pretty queer. So it's really cool that these two queer games are doing this collaboration together. Even if the collaboration itself isn't inherently queer. So I guess I'll just ask, my listeners, will you be playing as Joker in Overwatch 2 this season? Let me know in the comments, because I'm really curious to hear from more people who play Overwatch 2 and how you feel about this Joker skin. Let me know. I'd like to hear, because I I don't have time to play every queer game, unfortunately. So that's why I have guests on that, come and talk about other games. Like I had Cleo on recently to talk about Souls-likes. Maybe I should get someone to talk about Overwatch at some point, because that could be fun. And then the last headline is pretty quick. I mean, the actual news itself was not quick. Kirby Air Riders had its first, like, a big official reveal, like, gameplay reveal. It was a 45-minute direct hosted by Masahiro Sakurai. And it was, like, 45 minutes of him explaining gameplay mechanics and introducing characters. It was very similar to that Smash Bros. Ultimate Direct back in 2018, where they just kind of were like, here's the game, like, here's like everything that's in the game, like, just, I've seen some people compare it to like him reading the user manual, which basically it is, but it was a great direct. But like the biggest news from the direct is like, first off, that there's gameplay and that there's like city trials coming back, which is like the big piece of news. There's other playable characters besides Kirby, Meta Knight, and King Dedede. Everyone can kind of suck up enemies and everyone can ride any of the vehicles, which is really cool. And the game is now confirmed to be coming November 20th. That's a Thursday. I think that's like the week before Black Friday, so that's Nintendo's big pre-Black Friday game. And this game is going to be the same price as Donkey Kong Bonanza in your region, so it's cheaper than Mario Kart World, thankfully. And to be honest, between you and me, it looks like a little less like it's having an identity crisis than Mario Kart World has, because I'm still not sure why Mario Kart has the world in it, if you know what I mean. Okay, so that is it for this week's headlines. And after this short musical interlude, and thanks for sticking in here, I know it's a short news section, but I really appreciate you hanging in here with me. After this short musical interlude, I'll be back on with Kelly Gilkes, the lead artist of the recently released queer indie game, Matchmaker Dungeon Heart. Hi, True Avatars, and welcome to this interview with the lead artist of the recently released Matchmaker Dungeon Heart, made by developer Ghostmoth. Matchmaker Dungeon Heart is a wacky and heartfelt visual novel / dating sim / RPG / match 3 puzzle game that's both queer inclusive and body positive. This is the kind of game where you come for the story and characters and you stay for the match 3 RPG battles. If that sounds like a strange combination to you, I can promise you that having played over 12 hours of a game that I was told could actually be completed in 2 hours, it's highly addictive. You could play this game 3 different times at each a 12-hour length and still not experience everything this game has to offer. The characters are fun, detailed, and overtly queer. It was really difficult to choose who to romance because everyone felt so real and wonderful. The overarching narrative is intriguing. It's about a small queer community of monsters who are defending themselves from a society that wants to slay them. The Match 3 gameplay reminds me of Panel de Pon, or Tetris Attack, or Puzzle League, as it's been called in the West previously. And it's used to great effect in place of classic RPG battles, where each symbol you match gives you an attack or an effect, or even money. I cannot recommend this game enough. If you'd like to hear more about my thoughts, please go back and check out my review in episode 47.5. But today, joining me is Ghostmoth co-founder and Matchmaker Dungeon Heart's lead artist, Kelly Gilkes. Kelly's pronouns are she, her. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me to come on today.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I just want to take a moment to thank you and Jordan for reaching out and providing me with the game code, and the interview opportunity, honestly. The game was a pleasure, and it's really great being able to speak to you and pick your brain about the game.
Oh, I'm very excited to talk about it.
Well, I've got lots of fun questions for you, with a queer slant to them, because your game is, very heavily queer, and this is a queer podcast. So, the first thing I like to do is I like to start off with kind of like an easy icebreaker question. And also it helps me to get a sense of like who you are, and what kind of games you like. So what are your favorite video games?
So I love, I'm a big fan of the old point and click adventure games. I'm a huge fan of Monkey Island. It's one of the things I grew up on. These days I'm much more of a RimWorld player. I love those emergent stories. Always have to have the queer mod in there so that you actually get a better diversity. But I love how you control the overarching story, and then the little characters create their own stories that you can follow and watch. And then my last favorite game would be Psychonauts. It's just such a good story and such good puzzles to work out.
When you say Psychonauts, have you played both the original and the new one? And I think there's also a VR one.
Yes, I grew up on Psychonauts as a little kid. I don't think I ever finished it, though. It was very hard.
That's fair. I actually tried playing it very recently, and I also found it very difficult even as an adult, so that's completely fair. So let's jump over to Matchmaker Dungeon Heart, because I have a lot of questions. Like I said, I really, really enjoyed the match 3 gameplay. As we were talking about before we started recording, like I love, the Puzzle League games, especially the Pokemon one from the 90s. It kind of sucks that Nintendo abandoned it after the DS era because, it's like I like Tetris, but I always like match 3 games a little bit more because they take it's a little more accessible and approachable for me, but I'm very curious because for the gameplay loop, you've mashed together like a really unique combination of genres, including the match 3 gameplay, but also you made a visual novel, you've made a dating sim, and you've also made an RPG. And I especially love how each element complements others. Like battling my romantic prospects helps me improve my stats while also gaining relationship points. Everything kind of like ties back into itself. So what inspired you to choose all of these genres specifically, and what were the challenges of balancing them all?
Yeah, so the general balance of it all comes from my spouse, Jordan, who is the lead programmer. So he's a huge fan of Puzzle Quest, which, for people that don't know, is a RPG game that has the match 3 puzzle mechanic in it. And then on top of that, we're also big Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop role-play game fans. And so we wanted to like bring in that more like narrative story element there, and the monsters also come from Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, I love that. I love, yeah. When I first talked about this game and I first discovered it, I found it through the Frosty Games Fest was actually where I heard about it. It was one of the earliest games in the presentation. It might have even been the first, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I can't remember now, but yeah, it was pretty early in it.
If it wasn't the first, it was definitely the first queer game because I made my list in chronological order and I found Matchmaker Dungeon Heart right at the top. And so when I saw all those different things combined, I wasn't sure what to think of that initially. So I'm really, really glad that you reached out to offer the code because I enjoyed it. Like, I'm literally glad I discovered this game.
Oh, that makes us really happy. One of the other things, our game designer really wanted to give people the option to focus in on whether you really wanted to do more of the puzzles or you just wanted to be there more for the story. So you don't actually have to go into one too much. Like, you always have to do some battles, but it's designed that you can work on your experience through narrative chat instead if you'd like.
Yeah, I love that. I love the approachability. I love the accessibility. I also like the themes. Because thematically, Matchmaker Dungeon Heart, it's a game about finding your family, right? Like, it's about found family, found queer family, away from the expectations of cis heteronormative society. This is why I always say the word queer, because all the terms and acronyms always trip me up. The beginning of the narrative finds the player characters struggling to meet the expectations of their father, to being taken in by a much more accepting community in Torquedal. Can you speak to your inspiration for this story? Like, where did you come up with this idea?
Yeah, so a lot of our Dungeons and Dragon gaming experience, a lot of people, especially in the queer community, want to pick characters that are not human. You want to explore that other side of yourself. And we were thinking about, wouldn't it be nice to have a game where you got to like see the nice side of the monsters, that they're just misunderstood. And so it started with there, and also being like, oh, what if they're sexy and you can date them? And then we had lots and lots of chats about how like they needed to design them and think about it. And it was all started from characters first, making them fleshed out, realistic, lovable characters, and then our narrative designer needed then to find out, why would this ragtag group of people all be in the same dungeon ruins together with the Lich? Who are the bad guys? Why are they fighting them? And slowly fleshed it out from there. So it was always a character-first story.
That's awesome. Because actually that's great, because my next question is about the characters. So there are a lot of colorful and unique characters. Like you said, you described them as ragtag, and I love that. Like, no two are the same in a lot of different ways. So like, this is also true of their queer identities. It feels like so much of the rainbow, the queer community, is represented through these characters. You have a transgender bird. I never found any dialogue confirming she was transgender, but I gravitated to her immediately. She felt transcoded, so I'm just gonna headcanon that she's trans. But there's also a lesbian dragon. There's a gay vampire. How did you go matching with, excuse the pun, each monster type, so to speak, to each queer identity.
Yeah. So, from the very start, we wanted it to be diverse. When we chose 9 characters so that we could have a range of gender identities, both binary and non-binary, as well as a range of body types. So we actually originally made a grid so that we'd get a nice range. And then we went through a list of all the monsters that we'd like, and we started assigning them to where we felt they would be and who we wanted to see in the game. And we also have many sensitivity readers for this game. So we have been interacting with people and getting advice and feedback for various different gender identities. We don't have just like a single non-binary sensitivity reader. We had like for different types, different experiences, we had different people come in and give us advice for that, as well as different body types. And as well as we have one black character, and I'm not black, so definitely needed a sensitive reader for that. So we worked with them to make sure that each character was designed to feel realistic and not token, and diverse as well.
That's awesome. So you mentioned body types, and I guess you kind of answered this question a little bit already, but I'm curious from like specifically, because we've been talking kind of vague about like game design in general and just like overall direction of the game. But I'm curious, like, because you're the lead artist, like very specifically, like when you were drawing and designing and making choices about how the characters look, like what was that process like? And obviously you were talking about body types and sensitivity readers, but I'm curious specifically what that was like for you when it came to actually putting pen to paper for the characters.
Yeah, so a lot of research in there to make sure that everything is done beautifully. I'm also ace, so as an asexual person, trying to create characters that are beautiful and alluring and attractive is a very fun challenge, because I have a much more like outside view of it, and definitely wanted to make sure that everyone shone in their own beauty. Yeah, so definitely did a lot of reading and talking back and forth. We had I draw a whole bunch of rough sketches, and then we'd have a meeting and we'd talk about what we liked and what we didn't like and refine it further. And then I'd send the designs off with the narrative designer's work to the sensitive readers, and they'd give us feedback, and then I'd go and rework it again. And it was a very much back and forth process to really build up these characters.
I'm curious, this back and forth process and the general development time of the game, how long did it take to work through that process, and how long did the overall game take to make?
So the game's been in development for 4.5 years. So character designs were done in stages, as we had to do a little vertical slice, so just a little mini game. And so we had the dragon, the minotaur, and the vampire were our first 3 characters designed, and that was over a year period. And then we had probably another 2 years to get the other characters designed in there as well.
Okay, that's very interesting. So yeah, a lot of my questions are very character focused right now. So I do want to ask another question about the art a little bit later. But while we're on the characters, I have a question about the voice acting, actually, because I think the voice acting is phenomenal. I actually, I was looking to see if I could find a playthrough to see how the bird story, the transgender bird, Philomela is how you say it?
Yes.
How her story ended, because I didn't, I ran into a bug, as I mentioned in the review, where I couldn't finish the date, so I couldn't advance her story, unfortunately. And when I was looking for a playthrough, I found a playthrough done by one of the voice actors in the game. And it was just like, it was really cool to like hear their voice coming through, and I recognized it immediately. Like, I didn't know they were the voice actor. I just heard the voice and I was like, oh, that's the voice actor. Like, that's, the character animations, because it's a visual novel, the character animations like are a bit more limited, and so the voice acting really brings them to life. And I'm curious what the casting and recording process was like for the game.
Yeah, so we have a dedicated audio person on team who's our composer, and he was the one that worked on all the voice acting. And our focus was on making sure that the representation was good. So we wanted to find voice actors with the right characteristics. So that took a long time to make sure we found the right people for the roles. And we made a focus at one of our core values in the team is that we want to help other people get into the industry. Like, this is our first chance in the industry as well. So we'd help people who voice acting wasn't their main job yet, also get in and have a go. And our audio person was able to do voice coaching and help those people get the right effect. And then, so recording ended up being a bit all over the place. We had some people that had their own home studios and could record there. We hired some office suite studio spaces to do other recording. I think one person even recorded from their bedroom. And then all of the editing was done in-house by Ghost Moth.
That's so cool. I love that. Especially that you gave chances to, people trying to get their foot in the door. I've been in the same situation where I've either been trying to get my foot in the door and it keeps being slammed in my face, or someone does help me get my foot in the door, or when I've actually had the opportunity as well to, help lift people up as well. So it's really nice to hear that, especially in queer spaces, that is something that happens more often. But because you're the lead artist, I'd like to jump back to art direction. So the game's narrative is quite grim. It's about humanity basically trying to kill queer monsters. Like everyone's hiding in a dungeon while the rest of humanity kind of tramples over the land, killing whatever. And the game doesn't confirm, but the game suspects that, at least from the story parts that I played, that there might be other queer communities out there that are hiding, but this Torquedal community could also be the last one. And so the idea that Venora might be the last dragon and she has to kind of represent her species, and then humans keep showing up to kind of slay everyone. Anyway, all that is to say, it's a very grim story, but the art direction and the art style is very bright and vibrant, and it's very cheerful. It actually specifically reminds me of a 90s or early 2000s Saturday morning cartoon. There's a couple characters actually that look very reminiscent, especially in the facial expression of the show Jackie Chan Adventures. I'm not sure how many people listening to this podcast might remember that from the early 2000s. But anyway, my question is, how did you decide on this cheerful art style that opposes the dark game, and did you ever consider a different approach that more closely matched the darkness of the story?
So our original idea was that they were going to be much more literally the monsters, and that you needed these special sexy glasses to see their true souls. So that was going to be a much more brutal, dark art style. But we were quite strongly inspired by Hades' art style, that even with that brutality, you got this lovely, beautiful characters, and we just wanted to make them shine from the outside as well as in, and not just be dark or scary or anything like that.
I love that. So those are all my questions. But I guess I'll open the floor up a little bit and just say, I wonder if there's anything that you wanted to touch on, that maybe we didn't cover, or something, you wish, people knew more about the game, or, anything like that.
I think what I want to say is that, for the heart of the game, the soul and core of the idea is that we wanted to create a romance game that, people could see themselves in. So many in the industry are either quite misogynistic, or they only really have one or two body types, and the characters can be a bit flat. So we really wanted to just really explore that and make a game that people really could feel like they're a part of.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever played a video game that's had neo-pronouns in it. At least not to this degree. Maybe it came up occasionally in one or two smaller indie games, but I think this is the first game where I ran into multiple characters with neo-pronouns, and I was almost taken aback because you just don't see that. Yeah.
I think early on when we were talking with our first sensitivity reader for the vampire, they really said to us something that I think stuck, which was just like, you need to know more about their identity. They're not just non-binary. So who are they as a person, and how does that identity express in them? Like each individual gender identity is different from the others. And so we really took that to heart and had a strong think about how each character would be different.
I think you did a really good job because everyone in the game felt like someone either I knew in real life or like I already knew them, just like that shared queer experience, that shared queer trauma that, like you meet when I go out and I meet new queer people and I go and meet new cishet people, there's like a very different, interaction there between the two. Like it's a stark difference. And so that shared queer, bond almost, I felt immediately upon, interacting with these fictional characters. So I just want to applaud you because, it was very, very, heartfelt and honest.
Yeah, thank you. We just really wanted to make something that spoke to the community.
Yeah, I think you've successfully achieved that, and I'm not sure if this game is doing as well as you'd hoped. I know it's really hard for indie games to get out there, and just speaking from the amount of games that I covered in June, like there were a lot of games, and so I really hope your game finds success because it's really, really special, and I think there's something in this game for all types of gamers because you've mashed up so many different unique genres and gameplay styles.
Thank you. I'm just really happy that it like reaches people and gives them that lovely special experience.
Yeah, it's great. I'm waiting till I have another free moment to kind of jump back in and choose different romance paths because, I couldn't get enough of the game. The only reason I had to stop playing was like, I know I got to get this review out. I know that, I only have so many hours in a week to game. I was playing, Sunday morning and I was like, okay, I'm going to try to get as close as I can to the finish at the end of this game. And, I said, I'm going to allot 3 hours to this. And I started at 9 a.m. and then I looked at the clock and it said 3 p.m. and I was like, oh. And at that point, the game was done, and I was like, okay. So like I said, I feel like I barely scratched the surface. So, I guess I'll just say to anyone listening to this podcast, like, there's something in this game for everyone, and there's so many different romanceable characters that, like, the game takes, let's say, 12 hours to complete at maximum, but like, I feel like I could go in and play another 24 hours, two more playthroughs, and still, cause like I tried romancing multiple different characters at any time, but at a certain point, I was like, oh, I only have so much time to like reach the end of each path. So, I can't even imagine, if I can ask like one more question, I can't even imagine how much work that was to program and design and write, so many different, like, you basically wrote 9 stories in addition to the overall narrative. What was that like?
Oh, yes. I think we might have bitten off more than we can chew initially. We originally had one narrative designer, and it was just like, we need to hire some more people to help. So I ended up having several people come in and help us get through that.
That's amazing. Well, that is about all my questions for you and all the time we have. If people want to follow you on social media, where can they find you?
So we have our Instagram profile, Ghostmoth HQ. Should be probably the best way to follow up on our stuff.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me today for the interview. I know it was a last minute scheduling, and I really appreciate it.
No worries. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks to your avatars for joining me for another episode of your Queer Video Game Podcast. If you've made it this far into the episode, I really appreciate you taking the time to support queer-made content. If you want to support the show, it would be really great if you could leave a rating, review, or comment on your preferred podcast platform. I welcome you to check out the website, trueavatarspodcast.com, all one word. That's trueavatarspodcast.com. You can also find the show on Blue Sky, Threads, and YouTube under the handle @trueavatars, all one word, and on Instagram under trueavatars. Importantly, if you or anyone you know is queer and involved with video games in some way, please don't be shy. I would love to hear from more queer voices in video games. Your voice is unique and valid and worth sharing with the world. And if you don't want to be on the show or know anyone who's interested, but you know about a cool queer video game or a games industry story that's queer related, please let me know. The show's official email is trueavatars.podcast@gmail.com. That's trueavatars.podcast@gmail.com. You can also feel free to reach out via the website or the aforementioned social media pages. Things are tough out there, and queer people need to stick together when we can. Bye, True Avatars. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to speaking with you all again next week. Take care and stay safe.